Hi, my name is Sulaiman and I am going to tell you about the Constitution. More specifically, I am going to tell you about how parts of the Constitution came to be. The topics are the three parts of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Great Compromise, some important amendments, and important vocabulary. In addition, I will give an explanation of how James Madison was an important delegate that attended the Constitutional Convention. Let us begin. The Constitution is the one document that holds this country together. This Constitution explains the balance of power, also known as the checks and balances system, and the rights of citizens. There was a need for the Constitution because the Articles of Confederation, which was a document that established the government before the state Constitution, granted the states too much power. So on May 25th, 1787, delegates from all the states met at a convention. James Madison, one of the delegates, played a big role at this convention. During this convention, the delegates created the Constitution, which was not done after the convention was finished because it had to be ratified and approved by all the states. Today, the Constitution is still a growing document and has been amended 27 times. James Madison played a big part in the convention. In fact, he was later called the father of the Constitution. James Madison arrived at the convention 11 days early with the plan of the new government planned out. Before he came, James Madison asked Thomas Jefferson for books on government, and he got a truckload of books. James Madison read all about the different governments in different countries and came up with what we now call the Virginia Plan. James Madison's plan would create the three branches of government we now call the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. James Madison also has made another document in the Constitution called the Bill of Rights. James Madison proposed 12 amendments, but only 10 were approved by Congress. The Constitution has three parts. The preamble, which introduces the Constitution and tells why the Constitution was actually made. The Articles, which were the original pieces in the Constitution, explain the balance of powers in government, which is called the checks and balances system. The amendments, which were changes made to the Constitution, explains the rights of citizens and some of the balances of power in government. There are 7 articles while there are 27 amendments, and the first 10 amendments are called the Bill of Rights. The articles are mostly about the distribution of powers in government. It was possible for the amendments to become part of the Constitution because one of the articles gave the government the power to change the Constitution. The first 10 amendments are called the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights gives everybody the rights that they deserve. These amendments are: number 1, freedom of religion, speech, press, assembly, and petition. Number 2, right to keep weapons. Number 3, protection against quartering soldiers. Number 4, freedom from unreasonable search and seizure. Number 5, rights of persons accused of a crime. Number 6, right to a jury trial in criminal cases. Number 7, right to a jury trial in civil cases. Number 8, protection from unfair fines and punishment. Number 9, other rights to people. Number 10, powers of the states and people. The Bill of Rights was created because when the signing of the Constitution was happening, delegates, people who resent an area, like George Mason, said that they would not sign the Constitution because there was no Bill of Rights. So the government said that after you sign the Constitution, we will add the Bill of Rights as the first 10 amendments. As the father of the Constitution, James Madison wrote the Bill of Rights, which I have previously said. The Bill of Rights became part of the Constitution on December 15, 1791. During the convention, there was a lot of compromising. A compromise is when two sides give something up to meet the goal they both want to meet, or it is when you find a way to do two things. The most important compromise was the Great Compromise. This was needed because the delegates were fighting over how many representatives should be in the House of Representatives and the Senate. The Great Compromise, proposed by Roger Sherman, is what decided how many representatives from each state will be in the Senate and the House of Representatives. In the House of Representatives, the number of representatives from each state will be based on population, and the number of representatives from each state in the Senate would be 2. This compromise was made because with all the fighting going on in the convention about how many representatives every state would have, some delegates were afraid that the convention might end and all the delegates might never be able to form a convention like this again. In 1971, the 26th Amendment that lowered the voting age to 18 was passed in Congress. This amendment was made because people under the voting age of 21 were being drafted for the Vietnam War. The drafting age was changed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt from 21 to 18. Many people said that this was unfair because if people under the voting age were being drafted for the war, they could die never having the right to vote. There was a common slogan used by the people who were fighting in the war and unable to vote. Old enough to fight, old enough to vote. So the government's response to this was that they were going to lower the voting age to 18. This is the 26th Amendment. Section 1. The right of citizens of the United States who are 18 years of age or older to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any states on account of age. Section 2. The Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. In the 1900s, the 19th Amendment let women have the right to vote. Women's suffrage began at the Women's Right Convention at Seneca Falls in 1848. 4 years later, at the Women's Right Convention in Syracuse, New York, Susan B. Anthony joined the fight. She said that the right woman needed above every other was the right of suffrage. In 1872, suffragists brought a series of court challenges designed to test whether voting was the privilege of being a citizen. Also, Susan B. Anthony and a group of protesters went to the voting booths in the election of 1872, but were arrested of voting illegally. In July 1890, the territory of Wyoming let women vote. Wyoming was the first state with women's suffrage. By the 1900s, Utah, Colorado, and Idaho joined Wyoming in allowing women to vote. In May 1919, the necessary 2/3 of Congress that was needed to vote for an amendment to become part of the Constitution was done. This is the 19th Amendment. Section 1. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Section 2. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation.